Hey there, Visions fans, back with another character review. This is Chris's Macherie, a unit I've wanted to do for a while now. Unfortunately, like I said, I was sick when she first came out upon release, but hopefully not too little too late, as you can still get the shards in the shop and exchanges. Yeah, this character honestly might be my favorite character review that I'm going to do so far. You might notice this is my second upload. I had a fairly egregious error on my first upload, so this is take two. And finally, you got a name with the face. I figured good to put a camera on here and add some entertainment value, if you will, rather than just looking at a static screen. But nonetheless, back to Chris's Macherie. I love this unit, ton of versatility. Honestly, so much so that you probably can't, capture it all in a character review. There's just so many sub jobs that she can equip that change the profile of what she wants to do, and ideally what she fits into in terms of what you're running otherwise in your comp. So let's kind of jump right into it. Chris's Macherie here is a fire unit, which I think is really exciting because I think there's a whole bunch of new interactions that it brings to the game. Fire's been pretty bad for a while now. Obviously, rain is a good magic tank, but those comps are, specific to countering magic, if you will. And other than that, it's been a Delita and Old have really not been seen at all. Delita's had some problems, but honestly, I think Delita might be viable now. I'm going to get to that at the very end in a little fun extra chatter. Jobs, she's Dragoon, Viking, and Ranger, which is really cool because you get three different kinds of attack types. Dragoon has the Pierce, Viking gets the Slash, Ranger has the Missile, so really a lot of different ways you can equip her and, have vision cards to work to your advantage. The weapons, Spear, and then equipables Armor, Helm, and Accessory, and a move of 3 and a jump of 4, which is pretty typical for the Dragoons. So she's got a ton of mobility. Resistance-wise, 20% resistance to ice and 10% weakness to water. And then in terms of weapon resistances, 20% slash and magic resist, and minus 20 for strike and missile. The one thing I think is really cool about this character, another feather in her cap, is the 20% magic resist. You don't often see that on physical attackers in this game. Usually there's some kind of inverse relationship where if you're a physical attacker, you're usually weak to magic, and if you're a magic user, you're usually weak to physical. So this is honestly kind of a nice point to her that not every physical damage dealer has. So one extra thing that I really like about her. Getting into the stat outlooks here, this total luck, overall, her luck is relatively lacking. The average of this list is 198. She's at 177. You can kind of eyeball the names there and kind of get a feel for where she fits in with the group. The luck obviously affects things like her evasion, and she's just not an evade unit, so we'll get long story short, that's what it is. Agility-wise, she's actually pretty slow. So that's one thing I'm going to keep emphasizing throughout this review is ways to potentially boost her speed to get her to a spot where she's competitive in the turn rotations. You can see her speed is 52. The average agility on this entire board is 60. It is lacking, let's be honest. So, fortunately, there are some equipment, that works to our advantage regarding agility, but overall it doesn't do much for her total evasion. She's genuinely just not an evasion unit. Way here at the bottom of the board, I wouldn't even attempt to try to make her evade. She's got no passives to boost anything that does things for evasion, so that's out. But moving on to the actual accuracy portion of things, her dexterity stat, 168 here, it's still pretty low. So total dexterity not lacking, particularly because luck is lacking. So her overall accuracy not great. You can see her total accuracy with the board is only 104. If you were to sort this list by this column, she wouldn't even be on the list. That she'd be way at the bottom. So she definitely gets some help with accuracy, but she does have a support ability that gives her accuracy. So when you apply that support passive, which we're going to get to in a minute here, it bumps her up considerably to that average of 129 accuracy, which is the average of the list. And you can still obviously add accuracy, doesn't hurt, but she makes herself a little more consistent. And then finally, I wanted to look at HP and defense. Overall, base HP, she's around 2,400, which, if you look at the top of this list, it's almost all tanks. So for a DPS, she is a fairly decent, HP unit, and she does have some passives that boost HP as well, where if you apply them, obviously bumps her up as well. But most importantly, no defense or SPR. Important to point out because it is a more recurring trend recently where a lot of DPS are getting some innate defense. She doesn't have it, and she actually does have a source of getting it. We'll get to that soon. So finally, class and job overview. The passive abilities here, a couple of them are kind of redundant, but they come with the classes. She's not going to need jump +1. I wouldn't use HP up level 1 either. I would honestly be using Viking lore. To me, it's always been, the 24% extra attack is worth the trade-off of the 3 HP, 3% HP that HP up level 1 gives you. So I really do like Viking Lore, the second ability here. HP up, like I said, probably pass unless you're stacking the two of these. Ranger Lore, I think, is almost a must. That increased accuracy of 25 for self is what makes her at that average accuracy, and the range is nice, where if you're using her as a ranger, she obviously will use that to her advantage. Unyielding protection is actually a nice part of her kit because she's got 20% weakness to missile. So if you were to equip this, you theoretically could wipe out that resistance weakness. And then finally, focus, honestly a really good attack as well. The decrease in activation time obviously helps for her ranger supercharge abilities, but also helps with Dragoon, where she's in the air for a lot less time. And the missile attack will help for that ranger sub job too. So it's really just a trade-off of how you want to juggle ranger lore, focus, and Viking lore, in my opinion. Whether or not you think the extra attack and HP is worth it. You know, obviously you could pair these other two bottom ones as well, but that's kind of the fun of the character. There's a lot of options here. In terms of counter abilities, Dragon's Blade absorbs HP. I'm a fan of any of these abilities, particularly if you're not running a dedicated healer where you can kind of recover some of your own HP. Fighting Spirit, never been a fan of. I hate Berserk. I think that leaving it, you know, the more you leave up to RNG, the worse off you are. You kind of want consistency. And then finally, Reflex. I've actually changed my tune on this where a couple weeks ago, the 15% chance to proc, in my opinion, was just a smidge too low, considering it. If it just doesn't proc, you just get nothing out of it. But I've been using it on her, and it's actually really, really powerful. There's been a few times where she'll be dueling with a Kane on the side of the map, and she'll proc Reflex when Kane does one of his abilities, and that honestly tips the tide in that 1v1, at least as the battle converges in the middle in terms of Arena and the Guild Wars. So Reflex, big thumbs up there. Getting into the Dragoon, pretty basic here. You know, your jump, horizontal, vertical, dragon jive, those are all pretty standard. They're nice, you know, relatively cheap AP abilities. She does have an attack buff, which is great. I have not been using the Dragoon subclass. I think it's probably not your best use of resources. She doesn't need the extra move and jump, so Dragon Standard is an option. And although Dragon's Roar theoretically could be super powerful, essentially the damage equation, the final modifier is how high your bravery is. So if you can effectively take a unit's bravery from 97, decrease it by 43 to about somewhere in the 50 range, you're essentially halving their damage output. So it is potentially powerful, but 25% chance to land it is too low in my opinion, and the TP is too low that you're not going to recover a lot of AP if you're using it. So if you are using an ability like this early in the battle, I just think there's other better abilities that are more lethal and more beneficial. So the Viking secondary job here, I like that she has Viking because you can see this first ability increases defense for herself, as well as an attack buff, which she's got no defense, so this at least has some, you know, potential utility. I think Slash is obviously a pretty common attack type and not what makes her really powerful per se. So I wouldn't prefer it, but if you're running a really heavy Slash team and you want her to get the benefits of some of the vision cards and whatnot, or an Esper that she's equipping, definitely a viable option as well. And finally, I think this is really the bread and butter of what makes her unique, is the Ranger ability. Poison Arrow is a great way to just kind of like chip away damage at a tank on the front line. Vigilance, I'd probably turn this one off. I've never been a fan of this, particularly because in terms of evasion, she doesn't have it anyway, so you're not going to be benefiting from that. But really, you know, the guaranteed hit of Sharpshoot and Barrage is a incredibly potent ability, particularly if you have an extended amount of range on her. I've essentially been using her as a barrage machine, and it's been working really well overall. Other stats and info, this limit break, awesome limit break. My only issue with it potentially is you can see on the range here, it's a pretty short range attack, which means if you're using her kind of in that ranger sub role, she's going to have to get close to the enemy to land this, so you really got to balance, you know, what you're doing in terms of positioning, but it's a cheap limit break, which is good. 43 AP is relatively cheap. Number 2, it's potent. Number 3, the increased defense for self is awesome because she needs it. So a quick 20 defense will go a long way to keeping her sustainable in the front line. And then finally, it's a double hit ability that if you're running, any kind of pierce attacks along with it, it's going to contribute to that pierce chain. So really great limit break. And her TMR, I haven't played enough with it yet to see how the ability actively works in the team fight, but statistically, it's a good accessory. 342 is a lot for an accessory, and it gives her that defense and SPR and boosts that critical rate a little bit. Honestly, because her luck is so low, or her dexterity is so low, the crit rate's not really a big thing to emphasize for her, but it helps. And the ability of restoring AP to targets, like I said, it's good for teammates, and it's going to keep her close to her teammates. So you really got to balance, those first couple turns, how far you want to keep her away, and how she uses this ability in the rotation of others. Finally, the master ability. There is a small repeat here. Long story short, increase ice resistance herself. That's great. Puts her at 30% ice resist. Increases agility, which she needs because her agility is already very slow. But really and truly, the boost to fire attack and HP 10% for allies is really powerful. That's, to me, what creates a lot of new interactions in the game, where pairing her with like Luartha, Delita, Rain really kind of changes the profile of how those comps used to work. And I've actually got a whole segment on that at the very end. It's kind of like extra fun discourse. She also finally has this increased defense penetration, 10 for self, which is important because defense penetration is very important for DPS right now. It's there's a lot of sources of defense, so being able to kind of chip away through it is becoming more and more popular, and she's got at least a little bit of it. This ice resistance and agility, I think, is just a dupe from above. I do not believe it's 20% total. I have to check that in game, but I'm fairly certain WTV is wrong. Anyways, vision card synergies. This is really the exciting part of this character because there's so many ways to put her in your comp and so many ways to build her. So in no particular order, I do think Demon Wall is a viable card. The thing with Demon Wall is it's got a ton of HP. I like that it boosts her luck by a lot. As we mentioned, she doesn't have a lot of luck, so this extra stat will help with the accuracy. Will help a little bit, round her out. In terms of unit effects, there's actually none because this card is good for dark units and for Kayn. But the party units increase Pierce attack 25, so it still helps her Dragoon attack, if you will, and the increased slash assist. This is one of those abilities where if you're going to put this card on her, it really is to round out the team a little more. I have had some decent success using this card on her, even though it's optimized for Kayn. Secondly, Ifrit, really great card. The HP is good. The attack is still good. Both the attack on both these cards is fairly average. But really, the increase of fire attack of 10 for herself is going to make her hit harder. And the party attack increase of 50% is just going to throw a fuck ton of damage at whatever you're putting at your enemies. So really great card for her as well. Third one here, Raging Earth Titan. I like a little lower on the HP, a little lower on the attack, but the dexterity up. Again, good thing. That's going to increase her crit rate. It's going to help increase her accuracy. So I like this card to round out those stats. The increase of Pierce attack 10 on the lower spectrum of things. So, it is what it is. But the 25% human killer is also really powerful, where if you're running these really like offensively oriented or physically oriented comps, this is going to come in very handy for the rest of your party. We're not done. There's more vision cards. New test subjects. Love this card. So attack-wise, it's fairly high. Ton of dexterity, which again, going to help that accuracy on her a lot. So she really is going to thrive with this card. Increased acquired AP 30%, which is awesome. Because, if you're using her for like a barrage machine, this extra AP acquired is going to go a long way to making that happen. Increased missile attack for the party. So if you're running a little bit of a gunner comp, it's going to come in very handy. And then increased attack resistance of 12. I'm a big fan. I think this is one of the more underrated abilities in the game, where you can, increase your individual resistance against solo unit attacks. For the party, I think it's fairly valuable. Excuse me, especially in a meta or where there's a lot of pierce attacks, where there's not a lot of pierce resistance. This ability is another way to hedge against that incoming damage. Third one, dashing over snowy fields, still viable. Overall, the HP and the attack is average to lower average, but I like that it increases her agility by 5%. As we mentioned, she's a slow character, so anything you can do to help that will go a long way. And the party effect of increased pierce attack of 35. You don't really need it per se if you're running a pierce comp, because I'm assuming you're going to run Demon Wall with Kayn, and I saw Demon Wall is already pierce attack 25, so this is technically higher, but I don't know if it's materially higher. That being said, this card's definitely still viable, still gets a big thumbs up from me. And finally, Realm Reaver Odin. To me, this is a great card on almost any DPS. Just it's got a lot of HP. The attack is great. The increased human killer of 10% makes the DPS harder hitting. And as I mentioned with new test subjects, this increased attack resistance of 20 to me is like one of the most underrated things you can do for your party. Is just give them an innate 20% resistance to those attacks. So not only does this ability give the DPS more offensive firepower, but also kind of hedges against some defensive things as well. Espers. There's not a ton of Espers that I think are like, bam, perfect for Macherie, but they fit in very well with what she wants to do overall. My first choice here is Ifrit. Obviously, some great stats here. He's got a great luck stat. 14 agility is kind of right in the middle, which, obviously you want to skew as high as possible, but 14 is pretty average, so you take it. The only downside to Ifrit is this 10% water resistance weakness, because she's already weak to water. So if you're going to run into other Glaciellas or Eldiras, this is obviously going to hurt Macherie a lot. But in the broad scheme of things, the board is, I think, makes up for that. Increased pierce attack of 15, missile resist 15%, which, remember, she's weak to by 20, so this could round out that weakness potentially. The increase of ice killer, where she already has a passive that does that, she gets additional ice killer. And then if you really are worried about that water weakness, the Ifrit does have water resist of 15% to kind of bring it almost back to 0. The second one, again, highly recommended for DPS, Odin. The big kicker here is really just for the agility. The actual board itself, increased slash attack isn't going to really help her unless you're running Viking. The human killer, obviously, is probably the biggest thumbs up here, where it's a 25% increase. And slash just helps too. Obviously, you can do anything to make her more resistant to things. It's just right now in the current arena and guild wars, she's probably doing more against Kayn to start the fight, so slash resist might come in handy as she gravitates closer to your team, but long story short, the agility is worth it, and obviously good offensive and defensive stats as well. Good dexterity and luck also. Third option here, Tetrasulfid. This to me, it's really just for the 15 of the missile attack. She doesn't really benefit a lot from evasion, but extra 15 points of it could potentially help. And to me, the agility of 16 puts her in that speedier category. Probably not my favorite card for her, but it's at least something, in the increase of AP 7%. It is what it is. It helps. Titan, I think, is a viable source too. Honestly, these last 3 Espers, they work, but like I mentioned, they're not really like tailor-made for her. It's still got 14 agility. The pierce attack is nice. She's already got a strength against magic, so the SPR potential is a little redundant, but if you are seeing magic teams, this obviously is the Titan that's going to work the best on her. It does have some attack boosts as well, which is good for the DPS. It's the highest attack stat so far. And then luck and dexterity. The dexterity in particular is super high, so this will round out how much accuracy he has. So good card. Definitely worth mentioning here. It should be in the top 5. And finally, Aegon. This is probably the weakest case I have for Aegon. I'd probably put him on every unit because I think his board and stats are just so well rounded. Where not only is the 14 agility, but the water resists 10%. If you are truly worried about going in some water units, this will negate her weakness to it at least. And pierce resist 15%, which in this meta is super popular. She doesn't need the extra magic resist to 15%, but it's there. I think that's still niche for a board on a potentially physically oriented Esper. I take that back. He's equally useful for attack and magic. And increased slash attack, again, not really beneficial unless it's Viking. So Aegon probably has the worst case out of all of them here, but honestly, there's not a ton of other Espers that are really great. So really want to stick to these front 2, and then Tetra and Titan, depending on like the niche of what you're going into. Equipment optimization. Remember, she's a spear user. By far and away, the wind spear, it's not even close, is the best spear for her. Hopefully, those of you who participated in that limited time event to get this. The most critical thing about the spear is the 5 agility. Similar to Kayn, who's a little on the slower side, she obviously needs the extra agility where applicable. And so for like that reason alone, almost the wind spear is the best. Not even talking about the fact that at an assault level, it's got by far and away the most attack out of the spears. But even at vital and critical, 140 is still, I think amongst the highest you can put on a spear. And the increase of pierce attack 20 is massive. That's the biggest bonus you can get on a weapon. So, even if you're using the critical version of it, big help for her because she needs the accuracy and the crit. So this, I don't think there's a case for any other spear except this. Obviously, because it's a limited time one, though, if you have to. Ice Lance is definitely your best second bet. It does increase pierce attack by 15. She's not going to benefit from the ice attack up, so no biggie there. But there is an aim version of this, so it'll help her accuracy. And as I mentioned, like if you are gearing this even for assault, the highest you can get is 144, which is the lowest you can get on the wind spear. So wind spear making a case for just being objectively better in almost everything. And then finally the Drake Shorn spear. This is just for if you have don't have any resources to build anything. I'm trying to give as many options as possible, but honestly, this spear is very much not ideal. Go for the Ice Lance if you don't have the Wind Spear. For the non-TMR equipment, I've gotten in the habit of bringing up Platinum Armor here. We've had a few class battles now, I think like 2 or 3 since the inception of the game, so we've had opportunities to get those manual PvP guild medals, in addition to just kind of grinding over the year. So hypothetically, I know it decreases her evade by 2, but she doesn't have it anyway, so no big loss. But really, this is just for the amount of HP and the potential defense, depending on what you roll. If you get that shield armor, then you could probably build it at +0 and just negate the strike resist, because building this to +5 is almost impossible for 98% of the player base. Just too much of a time investment. Armor Light's a good choice. Defense and HP, it's right there with what you'd like to see in an armor. She doesn't really need the magic resist, so probably not an optimal armor, but it's still a good armor. To me, the optimal armor is the Holy Knight shoulder plate here, where it's got a great amount of HP, still got great defense. The evade penalty is not the worst thing in the world because she doesn't have it anyways, but really the increased missile resist of 8% is going to at least help hedge a little bit against her innate weakness to that, where it's going to bring it from -20 to -12, in addition to whatever you give her for Espers and Vision cards. So I think this is probably the best thing you can put on her in the non-TMR slot, but there are 2 accessories. The Alexandrite ring, number 1. It is hard to build it to +5 because it is a UR item, and we haven't had a rerun of the event that it was in yet, so it's hard to get the materials. But if you do have it for aim, obviously the 20 accuracy goes a long way. But even just building it up to like a +2 or +3, any chip accuracy you can get here, as well as the elemental resist, makes this a really viable accessory. My only problem with putting an accessory on Macherie is that there's not a lot of great TMR armors for her. So at least not as good in my opinion as the Holy Knight shoulder plates. So this is really if you're lacking for accuracy, and this is like the only option you have to put it on her. And then kind of worth mentioning, probably not ideal again because the TMR armors aren't great, but Sortilege does have 12 defense, which is high for an accessory. Since she does not have defense, it's at least worth mentioning because it has it. Other than that, that's really it. The blind resist, you don't need that very often. She's not evading anything, so evasion doesn't matter anyway. This is really just here for an option, but not a good option. For the TMR equipment in the armor and helm, I always put this one on here. Accursed armor, great HP, great defense, great crit, good stats overall. Double-digit stats are nice. And the ability, as I mentioned earlier, attack resistance, like single unit attack resistance, one of my favorite things in the game. So if she can cast this ability early, will go a long way for her winning duels and a little bit for her survivability. The second one, this is Glaciella's armor, kind of the same concept here. A lot of HP, defense, accuracy, crit, all the things she desperately needs. The ability restores AP, which is very nice, just to keep kind of, some of the high AP attacks going, and the increased slash resist will help her. Obviously, she's already got 20% innate, so just adding another 15 will help round her out even more if she gets closer to the fight and kind of that spam damage from other AoE attacks. And finally, probably my favorite of the armors. I mean, these armors are good, but probably not optimized for her. The Dragoon helmet. You still get a bunch of HP, still get double-digit defense, but the haste. The haste is really the kicker here, where if you can't actually get her agility up, this helm will go a long way to getting her speed enough to actually participate in the fight fairly regularly. So definitely a viable option. If you're pairing the Dragoon helmet with the Alexandrite ring, probably a pretty good combo, to be honest. I'd give it a good thumbs up. In terms of TMR equipment, this one's not my favorite, but because it does have good stats for an accessory, I like it. 8 HP, a bunch of defense. Again, this TMR skill I don't have a lot of experience with yet in terms of how the AI uses it. So, if you're manually controlling it, probably helps a lot where you can help build AP quicker for the team. But this really depends on, what your strategy is for how you approach an attack. The next two really are probably my favorite accessories, if not for the next page. Bewitching Boots, 7 agility, which she really needs. It does have some defense. The limiter off ability I really love because it increases her agility and increases her range. So both those things really contribute to what she wants to do as a DPS. And the third one here, kind of similar in nature, the Bewitching Heels. Again, it has defense. It has 5 agility, which she wants. And really the offset here is the decreased chance of being targeted. If you're having her fight closer, you're going to probably want want this because she's not going to need the range of the Bewitching Boots, and she's not going to, you don't want her getting targeted by accident in the mid fight. But yeah, good accessory. And then finally, obligatory, the illusory bells. This is the one that I've had on her the most, to be honest, just because it does have a ton of agility. It's got the defense, the accuracy, which he really needs, and obviously the revitalize ability is supremely powerful. This to me is really what enables my Christmas Macherie to just barrage the hell. I'll get into a fight and I'll get easily 2 barrages off, if not a third, depending on how long the fight goes on. So big thumbs up for the illusory bell on her. So yeah, hopefully you kind of got something out of this review. As I mentioned, there's so many options, so many comps you can put her with, and it really is her jump ability makes it so that she can, traverse a whole bunch of different terrains in the Guild Wars, which just adds to so much potential versatility. This might be one of my favorite characters to play with, and yeah, that's the character review in a nutshell. This next part is kind of a fun little chatter. It's something that I wanted to kind of just spitball and just kind of, bring some attention to. This comp is currently what I'm running for attack in my Guild War. For months now, I've been trying to find a way to essentially be competitive with Agrias comps. I won't say this is a Agrias counter, because let's be honest, there's really nothing that counters her. She's just so well-rounded and doesn't have any innate, true weaknesses that, other than a little bit of pierce weakness. That to me, now that Christmas Macherie is here and she's a fire unit and she brings that extra fire attack to her teammates, this comp has actually been a lot of fun. Delita is actually surprisingly strong. You can see in the stats here, Delita's got 39 defense and resistance wise. Because I've got some of the between the Esper and the Fenrir card, his magic weakness is gone. He's got a bunch of pierce assist, which helps against Kayn, because right now the meta is Agrias, Leela, Kayn. So Delita is kind of stronger against both Kayn, and Leela doesn't actually merc him for as much damage now. Dwayne does obviously a decent job. I've been going back and forth between Vow of Love on him and his own UR Vision card. The trade-off for me is simply the extra hate on this card, whereas his own vision card, part of the utility of it is that his own vision card gives 12% magic resistance to the party, but by having Fenrir on Delita, it gives me 20% instead, so it's kind of redundant to have him on both. So I figure at least with the Vow of Love, he's going to maintain aggro for a lot longer. That's really the big upside. But yeah, in terms of Macherie here, this actually isn't the optimal build. I've yet to actually +5 the shoulder plate armor, so right now I have Sword of Ledge on her just for the extra defense, but this is not a finished product. It's working, but it could be better. And as you can see, I've got the Demon Wall card on her. As I mentioned, it doesn't actually do anything for her unit in particular, but the 12% slash resist for the party really makes Dwayne a little more tanky on the front line, particularly going against Agrias. So, he just ends up surviving a little bit longer, and he's got that innate 50% confusion resist. So when she does happen to potentially limit break, Dwayne has a chance to resist it. But here's the kicker: she actually hasn't had a lot of chance to limit break against his comp. Dwayne and Delita both have AP breaking abilities. So there's a couple times in the mid fight here where between Magic Infuse and Delita's ability, they're just chonking away at the AP at the enemy team, and really goes a long way where Macherie is kind of an AP battery with the Revitalize here. That even Delita with acquired AP up, and he's got his own ability, which Meditate, that halves AP usage, something to that effect. That overall, in terms of how the fight goes on, they do really well. I usually, let me rephrase that, I always win against the Agrias comp that I pick. So the only downside, because there's not a lot of sustain, not a lot of healing, I usually do use all my resources in that one fight to take it out. So the second fight ends up being just kind of open up a new enemy and waste some of their cooldowns. So very rarely am I going into 2 fights in the Guild War and taking 5 to 6 stars. But I am good for one meta comp takedown, which I feel like is a valuable thing. The less defense the enemy team has, the better. So the other one I want to try is subbing in the Wartha for Delita, where if you can kind of do double ranger here, to me, if you add on the the gunner card, what's it called? Sorry, guys. Where are you? New test subjects, where if I can throw new test subjects and go kind of double gunner here, Luartha obviously has a bunch of ice killing potential as well. That I think it'd be really fun to try to play with that too, given the range of the map. So yeah, that's kind of why I like Macherie, because these kind of interactions are newer to the game, where these are comps that weren't as viable before. She can bulk up Deleter's HP a little bit more, makes him even more of an offensive threat. So it's been a lot of fun. So hopefully you guys also have fun theory crafting with what Macherie does in terms of opening some of that potential with the other fire units, and obviously with what you can do with the gunner comps and pierce comps as well. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the review. Good luck pulling. I'm going to try to potentially get a Christmas Ramada review done. The reason why I haven't is I'm honestly just not a fan of her character. I think the classes that she has, it's a slash monk, and I can't remember the third. But I just remember being relatively unimpressed with the attack types. She's got a super expensive limit break that on paper sounds okay, but in effect really not that great. She's a super awesome evade unit, but because evade's kind of gone by the wayside now with the amount of guaranteed hits and the amount of accurate characters in the game, that even just like harping on how good she is for an evasion comp is almost kind of irrelevant in the broad scheme of things. So for those of you that pulled her, I'm under the impression that she does have some future potential for her element in terms of what the meta will essentially come to in 6 months, but like even then it's not great. So I'll try to get a review, but if I don't, I apologize. I'm going to be a lot more on top of things going forward. So hopefully you enjoyed this one, and I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks for watching.